one of the joys of my life in working the job that I do is I get to ask questions of really amazing professionals. And we've got great professionals on the stage with us today, but also great professionals in the audience as well. And to make this session work at the end, I need some commitment from you, everybody in the audience, to think about a question that they would like to ask these great people here. Okay, because I've got a few questions, but probably not enough to get us through the 30 minutes, 25, 26 minutes that I've got left. So it's really important for you to think about those questions. I don't want you to go away from this session thinking, why didn't he ask that question? And what did these guys, they could tell me more about this. So, and that also applies to you. So that's really important. The other thing is I just want to find out a little bit about you, because that's helpful for us to understand as well. The first is, who is using AI in HR today in some form or another? Please put your hand up and do wave a little bit, because we want to make sure you're both awake and also active. Anybody got any idea about how many? Was that about half?
I'd say
about half?
A lot.
Yeah, okay. The other question I've got for you is, who would consider themselves to be a skills-powered organization today? Okay, so please put your hand up really high, because everybody else in the room who hasn't put their hand up probably wants to talk to you. Okay, so identify where they're sat. You might want to catch them as they leave the room. But what we're going to talk about today is really about advancing your HR strategy through this sense of embracing executive priorities. And what I've got, my first question, really, and maybe we'll start with Majda, because I like the ladies go first, right? I was brought up that way. It's really, in terms of the executive priorities that you're focusing on through HR, what are those? Where are you focusing your effort, and how does that align to what your executives are really after?
Good. So, thanks for allowing me to start.
Yeah, sure. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then...
Okay, that's good. So just in Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners, which for most of you, in case that you don't know, is the bottling company that is bottling, producing, and selling the Coca-Cola company products in 30 countries of the world, mostly in the European Union, Western European countries, and also in Pacific and Southeast Asia. So we have 6 executive priorities in CCEP. Some of them are focused on sustainability, some others are focused on ensuring growth in our developing markets. But I would like to just identify 2 of them that are the ones that we are supporting mostly in HR through artificial intelligence. One is enhancing culture and capabilities. You were mentioning skills, yeah. Capabilities is one of our big focuses, and through HR is crucial for this. So for us, culture, as we've been acquiring different territories, ensuring that we have our culture all around the territories and the markets that we're covering is very relevant. And what we're doing there in HR to support our executive priorities is making sure that we have the right development tools, the right talent acquisition tools that are helping us to make sure that the people that we include in the profiles, not only acquire externally, but also that we promote, are the right people. And we use artificial intelligence to predict the cultural adaptability, to understand the potential of our people to keep on growing in the organization, to personalize development journeys, and also to ensure that we retain the critical knowledge within the organization. So this is what HR is doing with this big priority. But there is also a second priority. We within HR try to be very focused on the business, which is accelerating a profitable growth. And the way we use artificial intelligence within our HR tools is making sure that on the one side, we're listening to our people through an engagement survey that we have annually, and we try to understand what are the key areas of improvement that our people is telling us, and what does it mean from our people, what is behind the feedback of our people. And artificial intelligence is really helpful to understand how can we tackle these areas of improvement in a higher speed. But also, we're using the Career Hub, which is our talent marketplace, that we have built with Eightfold recently, and we're using it to make sure that we have a proper succession planning to identify we have the right people in the right positions to make sure that we foster this profitability growth.
So in terms of the executive priorities, is that really their reaction to the pulse within the organization, how it's feeling, and actually then trying to align what the executives are hearing about the people, which then drives the people agenda, or is it also them just saying, I want this to be a great place to work regardless of our people, in terms of that, where your executives come from?
It gives us a lot of, I would say, more accurate information of what we are hearing from our people and and how to drive these priorities in a more accurate way, I would say. That's how it's helping us.
So that people listening alongside the skills becomes a really important part of your strategy.
Yes, it is part of our strategy, and it's part of the way we can accelerate the business growth through this listening, through tackling the right areas of improvement, instead of just sometimes listening without trying to understand what is behind what they are telling us.
Thank you. And Carl, from Vodafone's point of view?
Yeah, I think if I was to simplify, our execs are after probably two things, which is just buy and build. So how do you attract and bring in the best people into Vodafone in the simplest way that gives a great candidate experience, that promotes our brand? Because we are a customer-focused organization, so how do you kind of bring people in? And again, we've been using the Eightfold platform for 2 years now, so that's given us a great kind of runway to make improvements in that space. And the second piece is just really building. So how do you actually make sure you've got the right capability internally? So from a skills perspective, upskilling and reskilling at scale. I mean, almost 2/3 of our business are in the tech space. We know tech skills are really in high demand externally. So again, just how do you kind of democratize within the organization the ability to upskill and reskill? And that's kind of a big push for us.
And is that philosophy come from your C-suite, or is that something that comes out of the conversation that you have with them?
No, I think over the last 3 years, actually, we've been putting a lot of effort and energy into really making sure you've got the right people in the organization to drive the agenda going forward. So as a company, we're going through a tremendous amount of change. Some of that is very much driven by technology, which puts a real kind of driver into the organization around, do you actually have the right capability to really help you kind of leapfrog the competition over the next kind of couple of years?
Thank you, Carl. And Anthony, from your point of view at EY, how are you aligning yourself to those executive drivers or that executive sense of purpose?
I think, like Carl, we've been on our journey for the last 2 to 3 years, and now we're supporting clients on their journeys in this space. I think, initially we started out very much on driving the people agenda around our strategy. So careers was our #1 challenge, and as you've heard in the last session and numerous sessions, the ability to be able to use AI to be able to completely change how you can offer career opportunities to our people has been really critical. Naturally, we've then shifted, and one of the big challenges we've found, I know we'll talk about challenges later on, is, as soon as you open the Pandora's box of skills, which we did in Talent Marketplace, suddenly there's demand from other areas of the people business, but increasingly for us around the COO and the CEO agenda. So we've shifted rapidly into talent acquisition, which we're moving into next. The recruitment teams want to get in there. And equally, we are now about to release resourcing next month, which is quite exciting for us because this takes us up and out of HR onto really the true business agenda. The ability for us to be able to bring the best of EY to our clients is so critical that it's not just a question of cost, realignment, productivity, experience. It's actually the ability to impact our top line as well. So this is the critical kind of shift that we're happening at the moment. I would say the ability for us to have the right skills in the right place at the right time is at the core of what our strategy is around skills and AI. And we're finding that with a lot of our clients currently.
And in terms of the sort of C-suite, would they talk about that in that way, the right skills in the right place at the right time? Or is that an HR conversation?
No, they talk about money.
Right, okay.
they talk about cost, they talk about growth, they talk about having the ability to be able to flex. But what's increasingly interesting for us is, and I know the teams are here that are delivering this day in, day out, is that as we start to look at the evolving business case, which was predicated on cost, on productivity and experience, we're now seeing real benefits around agility, and cultural change.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that sense of when you're harnessing solutions like Eightfold and that sense of intelligence and AI, how much you become maybe more proactive with your stakeholders, especially the executive team. Is that something that you see yourselves just generally being more empowered to have maybe more challenging conversations with them?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, the philosophy and the mantra we've been using for the past years is talent drives performance. I completely agree with you, they're after the money. But fundamentally, that comes from kind of having great people within the organization, which makes it a very sharp conversation around, okay, what are we doing to get the best people into the organization? And actually, since we've been rolling out kind of Eightfold over the last 2 years, we've seen some really good success stories that you can talk to senior execs around. So, you know, time to hire is down by 50%. We've seen the cost to hire down by 40%. So they're real numbers that you can talk to senior execs around. If we do this right, using the right tools and tech, this makes a really big difference to your bottom line. So yeah, they're definitely getting much more engaged in the conversation.
And Magda, for you, in terms of that sort of influencing strategy?
Yeah, I think that, and building on what he's mentioning right now, so I think that sometimes you can decide whether you start just moving, when you need to do this transformation or this cultural change, you can start by trying to just change the mindset and the strategy, or just trying to get a tool that is helping you to change the mindset and the strategy. And that's what we've done. So one of the things that we decided is that we needed to encourage and to have more data of our people. And based on data and the information that we had on our people, and possibly most of you have heard me before, before implementing the Eightfold tool, we didn't have a lot of information of our talent people. So we had a very low adoption of internal tools in terms of sharing the CVs and the people information. However, if we were looking at external tools such as LinkedIn, we could perceive that there was a lot of information that was shared at that moment. So the perception of our people feeling the appetite of sharing this information was right, but not probably as we didn't have the right tools. So in that sense, the strategy was going to support us, but we needed something that was a platform that was helpful to drive this appetite.
So there's almost a little bit of a leap of,
exactly.
You have to have some data in order to create some of the catalyst for conversation, but you may not necessarily have the data when you start to give you that data, so if that makes sense. So you almost have to use the tool as part of the springboard for change. Is that something you found?
Well, I think what's interesting, you hear this over and over again, and we experience it around adoption, and you just heard on stage some examples of that. You know, having owned all our digital platforms in EY, SuccessFactors, etc. The difference in this space is if you don't have adoption, particularly in talent marketplace, you don't have your supply side. In other words, you cannot reach your business case. So I could get shot for SuccessFactors learning numbers being low, but I would absolutely be decapitated if the Eightfold numbers were low, as they were. So adoption is an ongoing challenge. You mentioned strategy, though. It's really interesting that one of the things that we've been finding is most of our clients don't necessarily have a skills strategy as such, or even a roadmap to be able to deliver this. So what you often see is misalignment or even duplication, skills strategies in learning, careers, etc. And then there's a retrofit that has to happen. So it's kind of interesting. We talk about strategy, but it's a challenge and something that we had to do within EY too.
So joining up all the pillars that surround people. Just to sort of move maybe the conversation from that sort of maybe a scene setting and mobilization of your C-suite and aligning to their drivers to thinking about the difference that AI is making to your team. Is it changing how you organize your HR operation? Is it making you do new things that you weren't able to do before? What are the implications almost for that HR team and how they work?
I think there's a lot more focus on data. Data and analytics is now kind of a real kind of cornerstone of, I think, what you need to do. So managers are asking for more kind of insights. So how do you get those insights? How do you kind of look at your data lake to kind of really help managers make some informed decisions? Now, that does need a different muscle within the organization to really help kind of focus on that. You also find that some of the typical roles that you were kind of looking for, you don't need as many or as much of. So again, there's a slight kind of rebalancing, I think, within the kind of broader function.
I think that it's also, data is obviously one of the key drivers, but I think that also it's a personalization of experiences. So this is something that is helping us to make sure that we are not, so not one size fits all, so the AR is helping us to make sure, and also democratization of opportunities, which is something that is it's kind of a game changer. Transparency in opportunities and making sure that everyone can have an opportunity that perhaps without this support, it wouldn't have been that clear and that transparent.
And did you have to go through some upskilling for even your HR team, not just in the tool, but the approach, but the whole mindset around data intelligence, AI? Is that something you've invested in?
Well, I think the whole change area is just so different. The combination of the newness around artificial intelligence and skills, you are messing, particularly on talent marketplace, with the very core of what people hold dear. So that combination means that you have to take a different approach around change. Change for your internal teams, change for your people, change for, I was really interested in the conversation earlier around people management, because that, to me, is the biggest C cultural change that is landing now. There are significant opportunities, and if we can talk about how HR has changed for us, resource management, how we find people, how we deploy people, has changed dramatically as we've scaled, into hundreds of thousands of users, which is kind of interesting. And now the ability to be able to plan for that change using Eightfold, itself is really significant. But the biggest opportunity that I see for clients and for ourselves is how do you actually harness that ability to do the people bit better? Yeah. People management is a teachable skill. I know that because I had to learn it. People here that will tell you I've not been great at it in the past. So I think the reality is that it exposes that capability for good or bad, and there is an opportunity to drive that, because for EY and for lots of our clients, that's the biggest differentiator in actually driving value, is the relationship, obviously, between the employee and the people manager.
And in that change journey that you've gone through, are there particular sort of standout moments you think, actually, if we hadn't done that, we'd have fallen flat on our face, or actually that was one of the real energizers behind making this a transformational moment in our organization? Are there things that you pick out and say, actually, if you do go down this route, this is the nugget?
If I could approach just building on the previous point first. So we are quite committed that most of our employees will benefit from Gen AI. Yep. So the key thing is, so how do you make sure everyone kind of just really understands what is it, why it's important, and why we're heading down this kind of track. So this week we've launched a global campaign, Empower You, which is around upskilling all of our employees, HR, non-HR, on kind of the tooling, and Copilot will be released to all of our employees as kind of part of that. So that kind of gives you a bit of a swathe. But I think there is also kind of a cultural leadership element to this as well, which is the extra kind of piece, which is around how leaders kind of creating a space for experimentation and just kind of giving it a go and learning, obviously in a responsible and ethical way. But then that does create the requirement to kind of shift the organization and the culture within the organization. Beginning part of this year, we started something called Leader Labs, which was around bringing our top 300 together to really focus them on kind of experimentation and innovation. So how can they lean in and use some of the tech in a creative and in a slightly different way to what they're using it before. So there is a little bit around, you just need to give it a go and kind of learn as you go. But that does require a different kind of culture.
So a sense of almost that agile mindset. We talked about earlier about failing fast and having that sense of experimentation. So that sounds like the perfect motor to help power you along. Is that a similar thing for you, Magda?
It is, and especially we do have one of the modules that we launched 2 years ago was the succession planning module. And it's been a game changer in terms of change management, because it's only focused on the C-suite and ELT-1 levels and the critical roles levels. And we can perceive that there's always and usually change resistance to the new way of doing things, because not only because the talent data is a crucial data for our HR teams, but also because using artificial intelligence that is helping us and driving us to a different way of doing it sometimes requires a journey from the teams that is in charge of. So it's not only for HR, but also for the managers and also for the C-suite and leadership that need to get used to it. So then also we've dedicated a lot of training sessions, a lot of moments to just make sure that they are embracing the new system and that they are embracing the new way of working. in that sense, because it's not only the system, it's also our mindset and the way of starting to share information, transparently move talent around the organization, which is something that it was previously not that familiarized.
In terms of the outcomes, because investment in any solution, people usually want to hold you account for some deliverables. We start and work our way down again. What sort of targets or goals have you started to set or have set, and what sort of outcomes are you starting to realize?
Yeah, so in the talent acquisition side, so a 50% reduction in time to hire, 40% kind of reduction in cost, which is great. We've also seen kind of the candidate experience significantly change. So we were 2 years ago, we were in minus numbers, and now we're plus 86 in terms of candidate experience. So that kind of speaks for itself in terms of real simplifying and kind of personalizing the journey. The big piece we have to kind of now work on is really the upskilling and reskilling piece. So 25% of our organization have done skill profiles, which is great. So they're getting personalized learning recommendations, fantastic. We really need to get that number up this year so we really benefit the entire organization.
And are people holding you account? Did you have to set targets before, or was this
we love a
all
good
part
metric.
of the experimentation?
Yeah, no, very much so. So the labs we did at the beginning of the year, there were 250 experiments. We're following up on those experiments to say, okay, what's been the impact?
Yeah.
We're also trialing things like kind of AI coaching, which is some of the new things beginning to kind of come into the mix. Yeah. So we're trialing that to see whether it has an impact both on the performance management side and also in sales coaching.
Magda.
So yeah, we have 3 relevant measures. On the one side, adoption, as we were hearing before. So I was sharing with you that we didn't have a lot of adoption in the previous systems that we had, and we could see that our people was in LinkedIn. So 64% of our employees were in LinkedIn. So we had really a relevant goal to have at least the same number of people in our systems, and yes, we were able to do it, so we had 70% of adoption very quickly, I would say. It was very relevant, and now we have an 80% of adoption in the countries where it's launched. Yes, it's amazing, and it's really relevant. That's why.
And just to give a sense with your population, what does that mean in terms of numbers of employees?
So yeah,
80% represents.
Yeah, we launched the system 2 years ago, October 2022, for the European countries, which is circa 20,000 people.
Wow. Okay.
We are launching. So this is the adoption that we are measuring, and now we're launching it for the Australia, Pacific, and Indonesia countries, which means 12,000 employees more.
So it's a real reach in terms of changing the employee experience.
Totally.
And you're seeing that ripple through into the employee engagement?
The second
survey?
measure is the employee engagement.
Right.
So we were just trying to look on the growth perspective on the employee engagement. And the first year that we launched the platform, we increased 6 points on the growth survey question. Just in 1 year for the countries that it was launched.
So you get some real tangible gains.
Yeah, and the third one was on succession planning. So we had a very strong measure. So we wanted to have at least 75% of the replacements in ELT-1 that were people that were actually part of the succession planning, and we had this metric on an 80%. And compared to the benchmark externally in the market, which is a 57%, we're really happy and proud that the system is helping us. Yeah.
And Anthony, from
your
work
so I mean, I
clients,
think similar kind of data for EY. We've now got hundreds of thousands of users on our platform, which is exceptional. We've got high, I think we're near 80% adoption rate, so we're not quite off at your level there yet, but that's tax. We need to get tax going. But I think from the point of view, what's more interesting is that, we obviously are working with clients. We had a recent Work Reimagined study that everyone can download here, 18,000 responses from across our client base. And what we found on the hard benefits that you typically see in business cases, you're seeing, for example, 3x productivity improvements for those organizations that are on the SBO journey. Obviously, there's no exemplar, wholly SBO organization.
An SBO being skills-based
organization. You're seeing equally in those organizations that are going down this route, and particularly using skills AI, be that TA, TM, etc. You're seeing there a 26% reduction in attrition rates in those areas that count. But I think what's really fascinating in the data is you look at the culture change and the agility, and you're seeing those organizations that are on this journey reporting that they're seeing a 4x improvement in how they're driving some of their cultural programs, and then a 2.5x improvement in how they are able to manage change in a changing world. So it's really interesting to see that data at scale now coming back for those organizations that are on the journey. Yeah.
But it sounds like that's almost like full circle, right?
Yeah.
Because it's actually that 2.5 times ability to cope with change. And I guess if we asked everybody who thinks they're facing a more change-faced world, you experience more change in your world? I only see 5 hands, but I don't believe that for a moment. Yeah. That ability to respond to the volatility of the environment that surrounds us, I think, is huge, right?
Absolutely.
It's the difference between success and failure. If anybody's got a question, please feel free to put your hand up and attract the person I can't quite see because the lights are on us, with a question that you'd like to ask our panel.
Hi, thank you very much for very insightful details about it. My name is Sheena Minas. I represent ST Microelectronics, and we are in the initial phases of rolling out the talent acquisition at fall. My question to the panel is on 2 sides. One is on the strategy piece. Like you all mentioned about your talent philosophies, and with the new data muscle that you now have got insight into, what is the future of your philosophy you're looking in terms of changing some of the aspects of it? And my second question would be, it's about on the operationalizing. You all talked about adoption, and adoption is a journey. So who has been your late adopters, and what has been your strategy to kind of work through those late adopters? Thank you.
Can you remember the questions?
I think we've got 30 seconds. 30 seconds. I can go. I think adoption is, you have to take a very different change approach. And as I said, I think the real challenge is the newness. What we found in EY is that trust was very, very important when we found within our initial pilot group, so particularly in global delivery services, in that area, being able to demonstrate to our employees where the data was coming from. Initially, they said, we want to see the algorithms. He said, you don't want to see the algorithms. But being able to show where that data was coming from was really key to us upticking adoption. The second thing is having a different change approach. It really, truly is. The change journey starts at go live, and you're never going to get 100% adoption. Maybe you guys do, which is great. But I think planning for staggered adoption and how you're going to have to look at change in a different way post go live is really key. I could go on. There's a whole load of pieces, but trust and then change, I think, are the 2 pieces there that drive adoption.
Let me share with you why the 80% of adoption. So our operating framework is in CCP is that we design global, but we operate local. So this is the reason why we have prepared a compelling communication, change management, training plans, and therefore it has been locally diverted, and therefore that's the reason why we had this high adoption, because we had all the markets at the same time going for the same purpose and the same objective. And when you mention the latest adopters, I would say that those that don't work usually in front of a computer are those that need to make a bigger effort to just make sure that the system is helping them to just move the needle. And that's why probably I wouldn't say they are the late adopters, but I would say they are the adopters that need more support on doing this.
I think there's always just something around what's in it for me, which is what we heard on the previous panel. So the more you kind of engage with the tech, you're constantly needing to kind of demonstrate to employees what's in it for them on the journey. And I think that one of the great benefits of moving in this direction is around personalization, both from the candidate side, but also from an employee side. So that's the piece I think that really gives it the edge.
And just a question in terms of managers and their role in supporting what you've been doing. Do you invest a lot in helping them understand how to do what they should be doing, or how does that play out?
I think EY definitely could have done more to be able to be very deliberate initially around helping our counsellors, as we interestingly call them in EY, really understand how they were going to leverage this. What's happening, of course, and I think you heard this in previous sessions, is that great people managers are loving the ability to actually have a career plan and manage around that actively. poor people managers are being somewhat exposed because you can now see with the data which employees do not have career plans, which clearly is not a great place to be. So I think the next big push is how do you actually flip that into a real opportunity around driving people management with AI.
It becomes around how do you integrate it.
Yeah.
So if a manager's going into a difficult conversation with an employee, how do you use kind of an AI-backed coach in the moment to say, I've got a difficult conversation, can you help me think about how to have the conversation? And the tools and the tech are there to do that at the moment, which then makes it very comfortable and easier for a manager to say, okay, I need some help, okay, here's the intervention for me, okay, now I'm going to have the conversation. Everything kind of gets sped up, but it's in the moment support.
We're still in the journey of supporting managers, so we started the strategy because we were hearing from them that they wanted to know more about their people, and now that they have the data, so now we are just supporting them and making sure that they are using properly this data and enhancing the plans with them.
Next step in the journey.
It's a journey, yes.
I think that's come to the end of our session. Just if you'd please thank our amazing panelists for what they've shared.